is Patrick Kleinbooi. I am the Managing Deputy Director of STC-Southern Africa. A little bit of background of myself. I completed my schooling in a little place called Elsie's River in the Cape Flats in 1988. 1989 I joined the South African Navy in Simonstown, and being operational for most of 12 years of my career, I exited the South African Navy in 2006. That is when I joined the South African Police Services in the Maritime Policing Unit, the Sea Borderline Control Unit in Pretoria. I was then appointed as a captain responsible for operations along the coastline of South Africa, where the mandate was then shifted towards the South African Police to monitor and police the inshore patrolling of illegal activities along the shoreline of South Africa. I then, during that time, was very much involved in extensive training for police officers to become seafarers on board police patrol vessels. And then during that time, I encountered an introduction with Norton College, the Maritime Studies. In 2008, I was then recruited to become the campus manager of the Maritime campus of Norton College in the Port of Cape Town. And then also after that, I was appointed as the campus manager at Gert campus for engineering studies N4 to N6. During that same time, during 2009 to 2010, I was then requested and headhunted by a company called Shipping and Transport College, based in the Netherlands, as a head office, and then I was appointed as the training manager for the Maritime Studies campus in the Port of Cape Town. That was also the time when Norton College exited the Maritime Studies, and all colleges then were shifted towards a dispensation of higher education and training. STC Southern Africa then established themselves in the same building as where the Maritime campus was of Northlink. And when we entered the maritime space, we extensively saw the opportunity to focus on vocational studies. Why vocational studies? Because we were looking at that time and even now to support those learners who exit schools at the levels of grade 9, grade 10, 11 and 12, that do not have the access or the means to enter universities of technologies, CPUT, DUT, Maritime Studies, because the requirement for those candidates are 60% in pure maths and science. If a student should exit the college at any level, N1, N2, N3, N4, 5 or 6, they can then enter this campus or this training center and start a career in maritime studies. Vocational, the entry level for seafarers to proceed to sea. Now, an idea is that, say for instance, a candidate leaving a N4 or N5 mechanical engineering at a college, he or she can enter the space at this institution, be presented with the mandatory requirement courses, and then also be allocated the qualifications in seafarers for able seafarer engine or able seafarer deck. This is then a stepping stone for those candidates, then eventually to become, if he or she completes his or her studies, and have the required sea time do the submission of required documentation to the maritime authorities, and then develop a career from where he or she started, and even then at a later level enter the officers' space of seafarers. Now, maritime studies is a very unknown sector for the underprivileged. What we do here is that we link with TVET colleges, and we encourage candidates to go to colleges and apply for NSFAS bursaries, do his or her studies, and then come across what we call, we marinize that student into the maritime sector. One of our flagship projects were a project with the National Skills Fund. Started in 2017, January, and the project ended in 2019, September, where we recruited 60 engineering students from Boland College, Northern College, College of Cape Town, False Bay College, and we introduced an Able Seafarer program to those candidates. These were candidates that completed their certifications at these colleges, but didn't have an opportunity to enter an apprenticeship. So what we did, we just said, come with your certification, we will apply for funding through the National Skills Fund and support you with the mandatory courses and add 2 qualification courses, academic courses to the program, which were the Able Seafarer Deck and the Able Seafarer Engine programs. Why we did the program like that is to give the candidate an opportunity to become like a dual function on board ships. Out of the 60 candidates we recruited, after 2019 in September, 48 of those candidates were employed in port operations. Now also, why port operations? That is where we saw the need that time within port operations for those candidates. You have vessels, ferries like the Robben Island ferries, Service Marine, Albatross Offshore, Pinar Marine, waterfront charters, you name it. That commercial entity were a sector that we could place those candidates successfully. So that is one of our flagship projects that were extensively successful to this institution. The second part, because we are a private company, we could qualify for discretionary grants through the Maritime Studies. And we have been involved with the Transport and Education and Training Authority, the TETA, for funding and support different candidates, unemployed and even employed. In 2018, we had a partnership with Salesian Youth Projects, Change of Waves, and we could recruit 20 of their candidates and come through a basic safety training program. But at the end of that program, the support that both entities gave to those candidates were, those candidates, some of them were employed on board SAMHSA Special Projects vessels. They were employed with AMSOL. Some of them were employed by MSC cruises. For example, and another highlight to this project, Isaac Soko, a gentleman from Mpumalanga, ended up and found his way to Cape Town, went into a program at Salesian Youth, completed his studies with STC-Southern Africa, and then got employed in Hout Bay on board a fishing vessel for about 6 months. But after the fishing season, he found him back on the streets, and one of our lecturers found Isaac just loitering in the streets. We got him back into the sector at this institution, and even as a social development from our staff, we supported Isaac to complete his crowd management program, his application for his visa, his interview with MEC Cruises, and Isaac was then successfully placed and personally taken to Cape Town International, to Hamburg, on board MSc Orchestra in Europe. That was one of the highlights, and so many we can speak about what we've done. STC Southern Africa just completed another project to support unemployed candidates that was fully interviewed by two agencies, cruise ship agencies, Gourmet Recruitment International Southern Africa and Waitress D. These are agencies that recruits candidates that has gone through formalized training, even if it's been at colleges, with experience in barman, waiters, hospitality, misogynist, gym instructors, lifeguards, photographers. And these candidates were then successfully recruited, interviewed, and actually offered letters of employment. However, they did not have the means, or they do not have the means to pay for these courses. So we applied for funding to the Maritime Studies, and again this year we could receive funding for 20 of those candidates. And after this COVID-19 pandemic, they are just waiting for the dates to be deployed on board their ships. This is a sector that needs to be marketed, that needs to be made aware that anyone in South Africa can enter this space. And it's easy. It is so easy by just marketing the program, by the introduction of the Maritime Studies, and just encouraging those kids, wherever you're coming from, that there is a space for you in the maritime sector. Today we are finishing off with this project, and we have partners such as project partners, our local companies, De Beers Marine, Transnet Cape Town, the entire fishing industry in Cape Town, Sea Harvest, I&J, Viking Fishing. And these are the sectors that we engage continuously, so closely, to support these courses and even the candidates that's unemployed to become employable within this sector. As I indicated, I started my career in 1989 in the South African Navy, a very unknown sector to me, gone through formalized training, and eventually got to my qualification as a radio communications operator. And I think that was the platform and the basis where I saw there's an opportunity in the maritime sector for me as a local kid from the Cape Flats. I then developed through various courses and also experiences with the South African Police Services, and saw the opportunity greater to develop into a manager and a training officer. It is then when I went into the space of training, got connected with TVET colleges, and I saw the gap between what was presented by colleges and the limited opportunities for these kids exiting colleges. And when I came to STC-SA, that is where I saw I can make the link between those candidates that exits the colleges, that do not have opportunities to workshops or land-based opportunities, and we could divert them to a maritime sector, to marinize them, as how we call it. The main approach should be not to leave school at that academic level, because you need a certification or at least a trade in your career to enter the sector. And that is why we encourage students to, if you do exit school and there's an opportunity to go to colleges, grab that opportunity and get yourself a trade. And it's with the bursary opportunities through the NSFAS, NSFs, you can then enter the maritime sector and have a career. Start a career from being an educate teacher on board cruise ships, being a barman, a waiter, a chef, a cook on board cruise ships. Even the super yacht industry is an opportunity to enter. If you look at local port operations, you have Transnet with their tugs, you have Transnet with their pilot boats. Those are all access entrance levels that can be entered through the sector. But it is important for you to go to college or go to an institution to have a trade and then enter the maritime sector. Another area that we need to touch on is inland. And we know that for the inland sector, the maritime is also very unknown. And that is where STC Southern Africa is linking with colleges like Gert Sibande and Mathieu College in Bloemfontein to introduce maritime studies to these kids and use those courses that's being presented at colleges as an articulation into the maritime studies. Again, to indicate that it is important to have a trade behind your certification and then enter the maritime sector. It is then for you to link to the closest port, i.e. Richards Bay or Durban. If you look at East London, Port Elizabeth, Kuga, Mossel Bay, those are areas that occupational or employment opportunities can be created by coming into the maritime sector. It's also important to understand that this sector is it can be lucrative. It depends on how you place yourself. But at present in South Africa, the commercial sector, as in super yachting, ferry charters, cruise ships, are the few highlights that's diverting to South Africa. And why cruise ships, as indicated by the agencies, are now diverting to South Africa, is to look at how they can increase the passageways of tourism around the entire coastline. Say for instance, there's a cruise from Cape Town to Namibia, a cruise from Durban to Portuguese islands. So for you as inland kids get into the sector through colleges, opportunities are on those coastal ports and to become employable on those ships. If I can mention the trades that should be viewed at colleges, and it's very popular coming through the sector, those are from the hospitality and even the beauticians, the misogynist. We receiving a lot of requests for photographers on board ships, educate teachers to look after the kids on board the cruise ships. So those are the trades in a softer space. And then you can look at engineering, N4 to N6, mechanical, fitting and machining, diesel max. Those are the spaces you can enter and come across to the maritime sector. Electrical for air conditioning on board the ships. That's also a trade that can be looked at. If I can mention Fufu, student Fufu from the NSF project, and N6 mechanical engineering student from Northern College. He's now being appointed by or employed by Service Marine. He's been earmarked to support his second engineer, and even there's possibilities that he can grow into the space to become a chief engineer one day. We have Apiwa Yawa, she was placed initially at Robben Island ferries, but then afterwards she could apply for a better job or a permanent job at Transnet. She's now part of the marine crew at Transnet. We can even use an example as student Banana. He's now working at Iskala Fishing. He started with the NSF project, similar as any of those candidates, leaving the colleges with an N4 mechanical engineering, did the program with STC-SA, and being employed permanently as a able seafarer engine. And he has received up until today his full qualification as an able seafarer engine on board the fishing vessel. It is also important for kids to understand your qualifications are going to work into phases. So you need to do all your courses, and then your courses are linked to a certain amount of sea time. And with the amount of sea time that you accumulate and completing your onboard training record book, that is when your actual qualifications will be allocated by the Maritime Authority. Now, what is STC-SA's vision forward? Our vision forward is to support the underprivileged, those kids that do not have access to the sector, and do a proper introduction in terms of the awareness of maritime studies, the entrance levels of these studies, what employment opportunities there are for these kids, and how they can support their families at home through what they can earn. It is also for us important to create partnerships with TVET colleges, with companies like Oceana Group. At present, we are in a project with Oceana Group to support them in establishing a maritime academy in Hout Bay. Then the other is Gert Sibande, as I indicated, to support them to bring these programs to Mpumalanga and support kids with those exit levels into maritime studies, putting them at the yacht club in Standerton as a starting level for crew on board yachts. This is an introduction to it that will support the underprivileged into the sector. For a candidate exiting with an N2 at colleges and do not have an opportunity to go on a land-based apprenticeship, it is an opportunity to enter the institution at STC-SA and start his or her career with that N2 certification. What will be required is for the candidate to do a SAMHSA medicals. The candidate then needs to do the basic safety training programs, which consist of personal survival techniques, personal safety and social responsibilities, the medical first aid program, and fire prevention and firefighting. Added to it, it depends on what sector you enter. If you go into cruise ships, you would need to complete crowd management and passenger safety and competency in security awareness. With an N2 engineering, as indicated, now that candidate needs to complete an able seafarer engine course. With that, the candidate will then be eligible to proceed on board a ship, but he or she needs to then complete at least a minimum of 6 months of sea time on board a specific vessel. Based on the 6 months sea time recorded and the onboard training record book being completed, the candidate will then be issued with an ordinary seafarer engine certificate. Addition to that, to achieve the able seafarer engine certificate, the same candidate then needs to complete an additional 12 months at sea, i.e. port operations or even on a merchant vessel, to achieve his or her qualification in able seafarer engine. Now, on board cruise ships, it is an opportunity to earn a foreign currency, and the the norm is if you enter as a first time on board a ship, you will receive a 12-month contract. Based on your performance and obviously the discipline in your performance, the opportunity is there to be allocated another extended contract of 24 months. After that, the space is for you to explore. It is for you to explore and to make that a career for you on board super yachting, cruise ships, or any other sector that you wish to enter. My last words to these candidates are, reach out to the sky. The sky is the limit. The sector is open. It is just for you to connect yourself to the sector. I thank you.